bringing the Santa Clara Vanguard back in 2024, it wasn't we're going to come back. It was that we're bringing the Santa Clara Vanguard back in 2024. And that is holistically. And so, as we've been working towards that, I think the great news is we're going to do that. We're going to be successful at executing a great member experience in 2024. I believe it's going to be a great fan experience. And then such that I'm definitely keeping, my attention on that, but I'm thinking as much about 2034 and the Vanguard Music and Performing Arts and what we're doing here as I am about 2024. And we don't have to go too far down that road if you don't want to, but I do think it's important people hear the mindset that we have right now is to learn from the last several years such that we don't repeat the mistakes that were made, and that we learn not only from things that we might not have done right, but even from things that other people did really well.
That's Russ Gavin, the CEO of Vanguard Music and Performing Arts. And on this podcast, he talks about the Santa Clara Vanguard's plans for this summer, plus what the organization is doing to make sure they're around for another 50 years. I'm Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts, and the host of the Marching Roundtable podcast. Thank you for being here to watch this interview. While you're here, we hope you'll subscribe. Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. We're talking Santa Clara Vanguard today with the CEO of Vanguard Music and Performing Arts, Russ Gavin. Russ, how are you?
Doing great, Tim. Good to see you as always.
Russ, you always have 1,000 things going on. I don't know how it's possible that you have this new role, but I'm so happy that you do. And I know that you do great work and that you care a lot and that you are on the ball, and everybody, Russ is he's great, right? So I'm glad that you took time. I appreciate you taking time. We're recording this at the beginning of May, so I know things are about to crank up for this summer. You're going to have a wonderful season. So congrats on this new position with the Corps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to serve this role. I think to talk about a little bit, I'm sitting here talking to you from the Corps Director office in the Vanguard Corps Hall, and I think about what this space has meant to thousands of people, tens of thousands of fans, and so it's an honor and an obligation to serve this role. And excited to talk to you today about all kinds of fun parts about that. Yeah.
Okay, and we are going to talk just a little bit about the things that have happened in the Corps being off the field and how upsetting that was to all of us. And yes, I said regiment because I'm thinking about corps that I love, because of course I'm a regiment guy, everybody. But the Vanguard is one of those corps, like the regiment. There's just a bunch of them that there's like this visceral thing in me that they matter. They're so important. I have such key memories and special moments that the Vanguard gave me, right? That are like, that's going to be with me my whole life. And there are a number of corps that have done that. And certainly the Vanguard is one for very, very many people. So I'm glad that you're there and that you're making sure that the Corps can be around now a long time.
Well, and I want to take a second and talk about that for me, because what you just said is what compelled me to go into this role, to put my name in the hat, to try to help. When I was a 14-year-old in Boston, Massachusetts in 1994, I remember very clearly being on about the 35-yard line, and the Santa Clara Vanguard had the Great Gate hit in that show. And it was my first year marching drum corps. I was a member of the Blue Stars, which is where I got my wonderful drum corps experience. And when I tell you that story, I get goosebumps on my arms right now, because as a young person, something happened with that drum corps in my life experience that was the one of one, right? It was something that was so compelling, so moving. It captivated me. And from that moment on, I was always a huge fan, supporter, believer, appreciator of the Santa Clara Vanguard. Watching some of the difficulties of the last few years, and that I live here in the Bay Area now, it was when I saw some of the struggles going on, it was a natural thing to kind of look around and say, how can I help? What's going on? Can any of my skills be of service? And when I say that, as though I look 400, I'm 44, And I say that as a 44-year-old, but I'm really representing that 14-year-old. I'm representing
Right.
that young person who was moved to a point of near confusion by how impacted they were by some music in a stadium. And as I've been in this role and I talk to people, I talk to a lot of alums, of course, but I talk to even more fans who have a moment like that. And they're like, this show, this moment. And like you said, a lot of drum corps are fortunate they have those. I feel very, very fortunate. Vanguard was always that drum corps that I looked at as, I was marching Blue Stars and I did that for 5 years. I was one of those kids in the 90s who, um, but the Vanguard was always the group like, well, if I wasn't there, I definitely want to be over there. And again, it's such a gift for me to be able to come into this role and, have the swag. Like,
Yeah, that's right. You're sitting there. Russ, you're in the Santa Clara office wearing your Santa Clara sweatshirt, like in the biggest role of them all. Like, I am thrilled for you. And I have to tell you now, this makes me want to indulge myself by sharing one of my early Santa Clara memories. Can I do that? Is that too much?
absolutely.
All right. So I'm a lot older than Russ, everybody. So I marched drum corps first in 1980 with the regiment, but in 1979, when I was a senior in high school, yes, that's how old I am. I saw Santa Clara first off in Sevierville, Tennessee, which always had a wonderful drum corps show. And I got to tell you, nothing was more exciting to me in the whole world than those stupid bedposts. Do you remember you may not even remember this, but I was all about. They were innovative, right? Like they were doing something, and the guard came off the line with these bright yellow bedposts, literally bedposts, with a little streamer on the end, and they did this whole thing at the beginning of the Verdi Requiem coming off the line, and they were in this line, and I was like, I could not have been more excited about a yellow bedpost, and I was that guy that went home, went to the Ace Hardware, bought a bedpost, painted it yellow, went out and threw it around in the yard. Yes, I was that guy. And then I remember being at finals in Birmingham in 1979, of course, seeing my beloved regiment for the first time live, but Santa Clara, at the end of the show, I knew the show because I'd studied it all summer. They come out and I'm like, oh my God, something's different. The color guard's in a different place at the end of the show. What's going on? Oh my God, that's different. And then, oh my God, they're going to do it. Oh my God, they're going to do it. And then, of course, I don't know if you know this history, everybody, but it was another one of those years where they formed up the line. The guard went down. They clasped hands. They did the bottle dance. The crowd went crazy. I mean, this is something I will never, ever, ever forget. It was so exciting. And what was exciting for me, and I say this all the time on the podcast, I know we're off track, everybody, but bear with me. What I loved is that I felt smart, because I say this all the time. I love when a show makes me feel smart. I'm sorry, Russ, but if there's a drum corps show and it's so over my head and obtuse and I can't get it, I'm very frustrated by that. But man, when you give me clues and then I'm like, oh, that's what that means, and oh, I recognize that form. So anyway, in 1979, Santa Clara made me feel smart because I knew that show, and I knew that normally when they hit the big if you believe impact at the end of the show, that the guard was around the outside with their flags in this big oval, and they weren't. They were inside the form, and I knew it was coming. One of the most exciting things I've ever witnessed in my whole life in 1979. Of course, only to be eclipsed by my beloved Phantom Regiment doing Elsa's. But now I'm going to stop telling memories, because I could sit here and tell Santa Clara stories all night, but that's not why we're here.
Well, but I do think the existence of those stories in our community is one of the reasons we are here. Because, as I'm telling my 94 story and you're telling your 79 story, I was talking to a student recently, and their story sounds very similar to ours, but it's about Babylon in 18. And they're like, oh, I remember.
Right,
and it was,
right,
and I think the drum corps activity, it's not just a great thing about Vanguard. It's a great thing about our activity, that we do have those moments that we get people at a point in their life where they're growing and they're musically like doing interesting things at high school or college, and we make them feel a way, and we make them think, or we compel them to a point that they don't forget it. We have this thing seared onto their psyche that is awesome, that you can still get goosebumps on your arms telling a story from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And
And
it's a
this is the
cool thing
magic of
about the
drum
activity.
corps.
Yes.
Yeah, this is drum corps. This is why we all love drum corps. We all have these experiences, whether we were marching or we were in the crowd or we were watching on a video. Like these are important visceral things. So I have to tell you, Russ, this is why Santa Clara is important to me, right? That's why I was one of those people that was just gutted when it was like, oh my God, they're not gonna be on the field. How is that possible? This corps that's been in every finals every year, like that was shocking and distressing to me and to a lot of people. And so I know that there are a lot of reasons why that happened. I know that they've been fixed. I know the core's in good hands. They're back on the field. But I think that's part of why we take it so hard, because drum corps matters to us, and specific corps, we have these important memories, and it matters. And I'm really excited that Vanguard is on the field, and it's going to be great, right? I mean, they're not like limping back, like they're going to
Yeah,
be
and
Vanguard.
I'm really, like I said, I was very excited to come in and say, how can I help? What can my previous life experiences? I was core director of the Blue Stars 2012 to 2021. I was on the admin team around there before that. And I'm a college band director, music educator, and I've also got some business acumen from the last decade of my life. And so coming in and saying, okay, what do I know, or what are my skills that can help this place out? And then finding those and trying to really, yeah, just hit the ground running as much as possible. But the good news is, like the drum corps experience that we're going to bring to the field in 2024, you're right, we're not sort of like apologetically knocking at the door. We have one of the most amazing staffs in the world. I mean, I get to watch elite designers and educators do their thing. I mean, it's funny in this role, that is one of the biggest perks, is just kind of being in the room with brilliant people, educators, designers, like, and students, and watching this thing unfold. And because we were fortunate that our staff remain mostly committed, that we're bringing back a very, very similar team that we had in 22, the core from 19 and 18. It is that crew that's been giving really cool Vanguard memories to people for the last several years. That same core group is bringing this this organization back to the field in 2024. And I can't overemphasize how important that is. We've seen drum corps take hiatuses over the years. I don't know if anybody has been fortunate enough to have this level of staff continuity during a
Yeah.
period of hardship. And so, as people are wondering what it's going to be like, I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be compelling. I've heard enough of the show. The show is titled. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm not giving it away today.
Almost everybody.
um, but no, when I watch our people do their thing, you just see these creative geniuses who have been captivating audiences for years, and they're doing their thing. And the young people who are able to be a part of that this summer, they're gonna have a great experience. And that's really what I'm obsessing over. I'm obsessing over, are we gonna make sure that these 165 young people that have trusted us with their summer, that said, you know what, we know there's been a couple of rough stretches here. We know it's been rocky. We trust you enough. We're going to come back. We've got I think nearly 50 age outs that we've got to give them that final moment on the
Wow.
field. We've got a core group of vets, both Vanguard and Vanguard cadets. We've got a lot of people who said, you know what, we're going to come and we're going to trust you to do what you said you're going to do, which is give us a great experience. Because bringing the Santa Clara Vanguard back in 2024, it wasn't we're going to come back. It was that we're bringing the Santa Clara Vanguard back in 2024. And that is holistically. And so, as we've been working towards that, I think the great news is we're going to do that. We're going to be successful at executing a great member experience in 2024. I believe it's going to be a great fan experience. And then such that I'm definitely keeping, my attention on that, but I'm thinking as much about 2034 and the Vanguard Music and Performing Arts and what we're doing here as I am about 2024. And we don't have to go too far down that road if you don't want to, but I do think it's important people hear the mindset that we have right now is to learn from the last several years such that we don't repeat the mistakes that were made, and that we learn not only from things that we might not have done right, but even from things that other people did really well, and asking around the activity, but more importantly, asking around the nonprofit ecosystem and saying, what are the great, fundamental things that we have at Vanguard that we can leverage, and what can we do a better job with? And so I kind of bounced around to a few things there coming off of
No,
the
but
magic of 24, but yeah.
yeah, no, I think it's great. And I think for one, the fact that this core staff of geniuses, quite honestly, is stuck with it. They're all back. They're doing their thing. Like that gives me confidence. One, that it's going to be the regiment I expect. I said it again. Sorry, everybody. I'm talking drum corps regiment. It's on my brain. I cannot help it. So it's going to be the Vanguard I expect. It's going to be what we want to see, right? It's going to be the same quality. They're just going to step right back where they were, and that's really exciting. And I do think that gives me a lot of happiness knowing that it's taken care of. But I do have to step back for a minute and ask you this. Okay, so every time, this is one of my personal frustrations, every time there's any news about a drum corps struggling in any way, the internet and it's all its glory, immediately everybody piles on. It's like, well, it's this is the last day of drum corps and it's not going to work. It's unsustainable. It costs too much. No, kids aren't being treated right, blah, 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 all this stuff. And we know this is not true because so many people are working so hard to figure it out and make the changes and set it up right. So that's my question for you is, quite honestly, if it can happen to the Santa Clara Vanguard, that's scary. That's like, okay, maybe it can happen to anybody. So can you just tell me a little bit so I understand? I don't want to know necessarily the facts about what happened, but what would you say to that person that's all doom and gloom about the future of drum corps? Because I get very frustrated that people immediately start to point out all the reasons why it's a big disaster and it's not going to last, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Anytime you have profoundly negative outcomes, you do have the fear-mongering catastrophists who show up and try to tell everyone the sky is falling. And the truth is, a lot of times those people have substance behind their concerns, but they're taking them to a degree that is probably somewhere between incorrect and unnecessary for the moment. And so the concern about the activity is very real. The concern of like we're on a death spiral, I don't buy into. And I don't buy into because I'm lucky enough to hang out with the people who are trying to make sure that's not true. And be it Vanguard or the activity as a whole, the drum corps activity in its modern iteration, it does cost a lot, and it costs a lot because we give people an amazing experience. And I want to double down on that you are of the generation, and we kind of talk about this from time to time with folks from certain eras, where you probably push started a bus in your life, right? You probably
oh God, yes.
like you.
Oh yeah, you're kidding me. That was very common. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you probably existed on like a can of tuna and optimism as your meal, and you probably sprained 4 ankles and never left your spot marching, right? Like in the modern activity where we do have a tremendous commitment to the overall experience, meaning nutrition, meaning health and wellness, holistic health and wellness, right? Physical, mental, all of the above. Meaning buses that we are going to start when you turn the key. God help us, right? Like that it has become an expensive activity undeniably. And I think what the good news around that is there's still a large group of people who enjoy the activity and want to participate and want to be of service to it and want to support it economically. And I think what we're going to find over the next decade is I am a fan of reconsidering everything all the time. My general approach to life is that 5 to 20% of what I think is true is not true. I just don't know which 5 to 20%. And so I got to always be asking, wait, maybe that's an incomplete thought. Maybe that's not correct. And I think as we're looking at the drum corps activity, those are the mindsets that are leading the conversation. What should be reconsidered? What should not be? Why do we even do this, right? My answer to that is because, again, when I was 14, it changed my life for the better. I'm one of the most fortunate people you're ever going to talk to. And I put a lot of weight into my time marching drum corps on all of the positive successes I've had in life, because it's where we got some combination of confidence and tenacity and stick-to-itiveness and all of that. And we're not going to find a world that doesn't need more of that. We're going to make sure that our model continues providing that, and that our message to people who will support that need is such that the economics sort themselves out over time. I mean, again, it's expensive, but I'm also the guy. My 13-year-old went on a band trip, and I paid $1,400 for like 3 days of Disney. I'm like, we're a pretty good deal, right?
Right.
And so that conversation is always true as well. But yeah,
well, right. Every time people complain about that online, I pull out, I repost one more time the podcast I did with DCI folks about what should drum corps cost, and they talk about here's what they're getting and how it's comparable to that soccer camp,
so
which soccer camp is 1 week.
Yep. Sorry, I appreciated you rebroadcasting that last month. I gave it another listen.
Yeah, I mean, we got this good information, and I sit here and I look at my feed online, and I'm like, okay, I can't just do nothing and let these people spout stuff that's really not true. And I got to tell you, Russ, the thing I loved about what you just said a minute ago is like the real sign of being a mature, smart, actualized adult, in my opinion, is when you realize that you are not right about everything. Right? Like this is, I mean, we've lost this in our world. People are so sure because they're terrified of not being sure. Well, I'm glad that you and I hope are both adult enough and mature enough and have enough experiences that we realize it's okay to not be so sure and to second guess and ask questions and try to figure it out and do things differently. So yay. And I feel like that's where Santa Clara is, right? Like you guys are like, okay, we're cranking this back up. We're going to do it right, and we want to be around for the next 50 years. So what do we need to do? And I love that you're there leading that conversation.
Well, it's very kind of you. I love that I'm here too, because it is a fun conversation, because it's not about, at this stage for me, it's not about the next 20 weeks. It's about the next 20 years. And that's a different kind of fun conversation, because you start asking questions like, wait a sec, so what does success look like holistically? What is our service to our community? What is our, how many lives are better because we exist? And then how can we multiply that number? And what are the assets that we have uniquely as the Santa Clara Vanguard to lean on to do that? I mean, I think most people know we are a very fortunate organization in terms of we are an older organization. We have a profitable bingo game. We have a beautiful core hall, a lot of really amazing decisions, and a lot of amazing shoulders that we stand on here because of great decisions made over the last 50-something years. And so to say, okay, now the challenge is to take it the next step and do it another 50. It's a fun game. Maybe I shouldn't say it's a game. It's a fun thing to be a part of, because it is about risk assessment. It is about what are we going to do different. It's about what have we forgotten that we used to do well. What do we think we do well and we don't, and we've got this fancy mirror we're going to hold up to ourselves and reconsider things. It's all of that. And I want to say one of the most awesome things that I've experienced so far is having these conversations with the people that I am working with in the 2024 Vanguard Music and Performing Arts. And this is from like board, design, instructors, leadership, students. When these people have been invited into this conversation, they're excited to have it. And when they're invited into questioning things, I find them very open to that. And I think that part of that is coming after a rough period of time. People are simply more open to reconsidering things. And
yeah.
And with that, again, I can't overhype how amazing our design and instructional staff are, because we've come at them with a few things that are like, hey, we think this needs to be different, and they've been like, we understand, and we're not going to deal with that reality. We're going to embrace it and maximize it. And I think I think you'll know what I'm talking about in a few months. Like we're coming out of the gates just with off the field excellence, on the field excellence, captivating things, and a lot of them have come from saying, wait, what could we do a little different? What could we do more efficiently? What could we do with again, the resources we have that are both really compelling in the near term and sustainable in the long term, right? So it's been fun.
Yeah, and I think anytime in life that you stumble and something doesn't go right, or there's a crisis or whatever, we have an opportunity to come out of that stronger. You learn some things, you figured out some things, you decided some things. I think even like, God, I hate to even bring it up, but even coming out of the whole COVID thing, a lot of people reassess their lives. What's really important to me? Where do I really want to spend my time? Where do I'm hoping, I don't think enough people did that, but I'm hoping that a lot of people did. And I feel like the same thing's got to be true here. Now, here's this great organization. Something happened with the 501c3, I don't know, but it didn't go right. And now adjustments have been made. We're putting it back together, and there's a lot of things I'm sure that came out of that negative experience that are now setting you up for success.
Yes, and I do want to emphasize, because somebody's going to hear this and they're going to be like, God, this Vanguard guy's a blowhard. He's making it like everything's perfect. Like I still tell our entire team almost all the time, we are still healing as an organization. We had a rough series of years. I'm the fourth CEO in 5 years. Like we've got a lot of things. We went through a pandemic. We've got a lot of things that the organization is going to be better in 6 months, because we're continuing to learn, heal, adjust, make sure that we are not like, so there's somebody in the world who's going to be like, they made it back on the field, and they will see that as some sort of arrival. I'm like, no. Like that's a step on the journey, and reminding the whole team here that like that's where we are. And yeah, coming out of COVID, I mean, Vanguard was one of the groups that they didn't do 21. They came back in 22. It was a tough journey for everybody. And the things that they learned going through that, the things that I feel like when I do kind of like analysis of business operations and things like that, it's like, okay, here's 17, 18, 19, here's 20, 21, 22. What's similar, what's different, what do we need to adjust today? Those are ongoing daily conversations. But I also want to say, this is also rooted in the thing I said before, that the thing that is true in 3 months about the Vanguard Music and Performing Arts that's not true today is going to be there. And we have to be constantly asking ourselves, wait, what are we sure? Are we sure we're doing the right thing? Or we're sure we're moving in the right direction? That was a little confusing how I framed it, but the constant reality that we are vulnerable, and we're not vulnerable because we're weak. We're vulnerable because we're human and made up of humans. And when we are constantly reminding ourselves of that, we can have conversations that allow us all to do a better job by saying, oh, wait a minute, we thought this was a good idea. Nothing's worse than having an idea and then doing that idea time and time again because it's the one you came up with first, right? And is that
that's the definition of insanity, right? If something doesn't work, right, and you're doing it. Right.
Yeah.
So the thing I like that you're saying is that I feel like the Vanguard and a lot of different organizations in DCI are like doing this thing. Like, okay, what's working, what's not working? We want to be sustainable. We want to figure it out. Let's try this. Let's have this conversation. But I love that people are aware of it and they're really trying. And I think this is one of my takeaways here is why I wanted to talk to you, especially is because I want people to know care is being given, attention is being given. It's not like we're just you know, I don't think anybody in DCI this year is just like, well, we're just going to spend whatever we need to win and forget that. Like, that's not how it works. We are taking care of students. We are making long-term choices and plans. And I just want to remind people that that's happening, and that you're sort of like the poster child, I think, Russ, because you're in front of this organization that just, you know, had a big hiccup.
Well, and I want to be really clear in giving credit to all of the other drum corps and all of the other corps directors who have been amazing resources for me and our team as we've navigated these things. Just
Right.
and so I share that because it's indicative of the collective spirit of us having a healthy drum corps international. That again, I'm here. I knew a lot of people in the room from the Blue Stars. I didn't know them all, but I'm coming into the room and I'm saying, hey, I believe I can be of assistance to this organization, that we all want to be better. And I want the world to know all of the other drum corps executive directors and CEO are like all they're like, how can I help? How can I help? We know that this activity is stronger and better with Vanguard in it, with all like it would have been anybody, right? But everybody, this is the week. I I don't want to give specific props because I could literally go through all the drum corps and be like, and this is how this person and this is how this person helped. But I texted another organization. I'm like, hey, we're thinking of moving to this particular software that is going to power some of our fundraising. What do you think about it? And they came back to me within 30 seconds. They're like, oh, it's the best, and this is what you should be thinking about. How is your CRM looking? And that collaborative spirit, I feel like a lot of times out there, you know, dare I say on the internet, but just kind of in the wild when you don't see behind the scenes, they imagine that we go into those rooms wearing like the 1988 version of the uniform with a sword in our hands, and we're just like combative. It's the
Yeah.
exact opposite. And I think because I was looking to see if one of the other directors had replied to a text I sent him earlier today. Um, like that's who we are, and that's what this activity is. It's not a bunch of people who just care about finals night rank order. It's a bunch of people that care about giving this experience to young people and want that to be true 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And by the way, it doesn't look the same in 2024 as it did in 1994, does it? Everybody shake your head left to right on the like. And so as you see points of evolution, you should say, oh, thank goodness they're not going to die, because that's what evolution is. And when you see people trying new things, you should get excited about it. You shouldn't just be like, a third valve, A2 Brute, right? Like,
Hey, listen, this is what I was just thinking while you were saying that, Russ. Like, I've lived through all this, right? I mean, I've been around, I'm an old dog in the drum corps world, okay, everybody? So, like, I remember when that was going to be the end of drum corps. And then I remember when amplification that was it. It's all over now, you know. And then I mean, then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the same activity on the field as with the design and what they're doing. But I always tell people, if you think that drum corps is not drum corps, then you just need to go drive up to one of those schools where they're all. And I mean, I did this recently. I flew to Texas a few years ago. I pulled up to a Blue Coats, you know, school to do some interviews, and like there's somebody sitting on the curb having a bowl of cereal, and somebody else is cleaning out their mouthpiece. And I thought, there's somebody's, you know, schlepping their suitcase. And I said, this is still drum corps, even if they're wearing something different than I'm used to, you know.
I think that's to me that's kind of the head fake of this whole thing, which is that people are like, it's so different. But no, what you just said, I have sat on a curb in Texas in 100-degree heat eating eggs off of a like plastic boat with like,
Yeah, yeah.
and the same way we did in the 90s. Again, it's probably better food now, but the
Well, look, a lot of things are better, I think. I mean, a lot of things are different. Like the students do have
yeah.
probably a lot of things are better, and the students are taken care of better. But my point is the drum corps experience
Oh
of
yeah, the
having those
tenacity.
rehearsals, doing a
Yeah,
show, getting together with your friends, going out for an audience, like getting on that bus, like that's still that same thing that we all loved.
absolutely. And it is why I love watching the students that I interact with in drum corps live their lives afterwards, because you just see them taking those skill sets, them taking that, again, I always go back to tenacity, grit, patience, teamwork, all those things, right? The ability to fight with your best friend and then hug them a couple of minutes later. Uh, all of
Yeah,
those things
that's very
you
drum
see,
corps.
right? You see people then waking up as 30, 40, 50-year olds, and you're like, oh, you're better at being a great person within your community because you did drum corps and you took those skills and put them over there. And I also want to say to the world, we're not unique in our ability to teach this. There are a lot of places that serve humanity similarly.
Yeah.
This just happens to be the ones that we fell in love with. And we, as you and me, Tim, and it's all the directors, it's the people who put in countless hours to get these folks up and down the road. It's every bus driver, every truck driver, every cook who are compelled to say, wait, like this is so worth it to give these people an experience that I'm going to make a personal sacrifice because I believe it is worth it. And the funny part, I say all of that, we haven't even talked about the show. Like like that's all separate from the people in the audience even. And that the way that we compel people in the audience is a whole other conversation that we probably won't get into. But to take it back to the root of your question, the future of drum corps, I believe the future of this activity, it has the opportunity to be the brightest it's ever been. And there are a lot of people who are intelligent, thoughtful, holistically thinking people working hard to make sure that is true. Nothing is guaranteed ever, but man, people are trying hard, and they're trying in places you're not watching, uh, because that's the nature of doing these things. I do love giving updates to people about what we're seeing, but we're always throwing spaghetti against the wall. You don't want to see the spaghetti when it's being thrown. You want us to come back to you and say, "Hey, we found this new, and we're going to give it a run." Um, but yeah,
Well, just like you don't want to see a band show on the first day of band camp. I mean, come on. Everybody is really struggling because we all know that story. But I think it's I love that you said that. The thing that gets me through the day at this point, Russ, in my life is, like, I've already mentioned this, but I've seen enough of things happening in the world, is that I always just focus on the helpers, right? Like, I know that even if I worry about drum corps and its sustainability and how are the blah, blah, I think, okay, well, there's a whole bunch of really smart, really passionate people doing a lot of really good work to figure this out. And I feel like it's in good hands. And that's why I was happy to get to talk to you, because I feel like you're one of those people. But I feel like if people would stop and think, like, there are a lot of, I've just looked at the helpers. This is true of all kinds of things that happen in our world. I think, well, there's some really good people, a lot smarter than me, that are specialists in this, and they're working on this, and they're really smart, and they care, and they're going to help us figure it out. That's the way I approach drum corps these days. Like, rather than being gloom and doom, I always think, like, okay, maybe I don't love everything about it different from when I marched, because we all love drum corps the most, is exactly how it was when we marched. Like, that's just part of it, everybody. But I want to remind people that there are a lot of really good people that are figuring it out and that really care. And I feel like it's in good hands. So I can go to bed tonight resting easy that the Vanguard's going to be around a long time, because you and a lot of people are really working on this.
Well, I appreciate your faith in us, and I believe that is a true statement, and we will work very hard to keep it true. And again, I do think the activity and Vanguard ask the same thing of the people who are listening to this, which is your kindness and your patience as we navigate the world. And that's coming off of a great season, or coming off of a rough season, or going into, like, just remember, yeah, the exactly what you said. There are a lot of really good human beings trying to make this a reality, and have give us the grace and the patience to do that. Be it, again, coming out of a rough period, or coming off of a great period, or an organization that's really new. Some of the younger drum corps are really coming onto the scene right now. Give them that love and that patience and that support. Or a group like this that has been around forever. Just remember to be kind and be cool and be thankful that people keep doing this. Because yeah, again, that I can't speak enough again about the other directors in the room. if most people who are grumpy about drum corps spent time with the people I've gotten to spend time with in the last 9 months in that room, they would be very they would change their tune, because it's a lot of wonderful human beings who are helpful and thinking about it the right way.
This was really fun. Thank you, Russ, for talking to me.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure. Always fun.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.